Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, the doors are closed and the key in the door. A warm welcome to all of you to this 28th annual award ceremony of the Olof Palmepris. And a special welcome to Lisbeth Palme and her family, and to our guests of honor, Spyridon, Galinos, and Giusi, Nicolini. We are happy to see the Swedish government represented here by the Deputy Foreign Minister Annika Söder, and we welcome former Prime Minister Ingvar Carlsson, the President of the City... No funciona. And the President of the City Council of Stockholm, Eva-Louise Erlandsson, the President of Stockholm's Human Rights Council, Sissela Nordin Blanco, and the Metropolitan of Sweden and all Scandinavian, Kleopas Strongilis, and former Palmepris awardee Kudo Baxi and Hans Blix. We greet the Diplomatic Corps and Kenneth Forslund, Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and other representatives of the Swedish Parliament, as well as of the European Commission and the European Parliament, trade unions and solidarity groups, academia and think tanks, media and publishing houses, cultural workers and artists, private sector and church leaders, peace and human rights activists, the UN family with the UNDP and the Swedish UN Association, the ILO, CIPRI, an international idea, the Fair Trade Movement, the Right Livelihood Foundation, and Amnesty International, and no less than 3 officers of the Swedish Coast Guard, Sofia Bergström, Fredrik Köster, and Carolina Fehn, who with their vessels and crews have rescued more than 5,000 people in Italian and Greek waters, assisted by Rear Admiral Kenneth Neynes, Commander Robert Primus, and Lieutenant Philip Lilja, and other crew members present here today. Present are also students from Kristofferskolan in Bromma with their teacher, Kerstin Bryggeman, who has worked with refugees in Lesvos, and we thank Biki Chakraborty for his constant support to the Memorial Fund. Today, Olof Palme would have celebrated his 90th birthday, and we gather here in the old parliamentary building, where he spent so much time as a member of parliament. You can see his name on this wall, to my right, next to that of former Foreign Minister Lena Hjelm-Wallén, who is also here today, as well as former Deputy UN Secretary General Jan Eliasson. This month, Sweden began its 2-year period in the United Nations Security Council. It is an important and difficult challenge in a particularly turbulent and unpredictable time. For Olof Palme, who tried to participate every year as Prime Minister in the work of the World Organization, this challenge would have been welcome and inspiring. His concept of détente through common security, trade, culture, diplomacy, and people-to-people relations are elements sadly missing in today's world of confrontation, xenophobia, occupation, terror, erosion of human rights, and in which a Trump version of ethnic and religious cleansing confronts decency and international laws. We feel confident that the Swedish government will be that independent and globally committed actor in the Council as it has pledged. And Prime Minister Stefan Löfven, in his first policy declaration in the Parliament, underlined that commitment when he said no to NATO membership and yes to a Palestinian state. The wars and terrors in the wider Middle East and Afghanistan, and the conflicts and degrading human conditions in many parts of Africa have caused an unprecedented flow of refugees and asylum seekers. Thus, extreme focus has been put on one of the most fundamental of human rights, the right to seek asylum. Europe has failed to implement a collective managed response to the challenges posed by the arrival of over 1 million refugees and migrants, said Filippo Grandi, the new UN High Commissioner for Refugees. Many islands and coastal towns have been the goal of asylum seekers in the Mediterranean and the Aegean Sea. All over people rallied to assist the refugees. And because of their geographic location, 2 islands, Lampedusa and Lesbos, have become the centers of humanitarian action. Over the last 3 years, more than 500,000 asylum seekers landed in Italy, partly due to the chaos following the civil war in Libya. In 2016, more than 15,000 of these were unaccompanied children. 2016 was also the deadliest year on record on the Mediterranean, with more than 5,000 deaths recorded. Over the last 2 decades, 400,000 migrants landed on the tiny island of Lampedusa, 20 square kilometers, closer to Tunisia than Sicily or mainland Italy. And during my visit to Lampedusa last December, Major Nicolini took me to follow the work of the Italian Coast Guard. Italy insists upon continuing search and rescue operations and not to focus on stopping new arrivals. On the Coast Guard radio, we heard another death reported from a rescue vessel. And on a wall in Lampedusa, I saw a graffiti, "Proteggere le persone, non I confini," protect people, not borders. 2 weeks ago, the United Nations Refugee Agency praised the rescue by Italian Coast Guard in coordination with EU's Frontex. Over 3 days, over 1,500 people from boats struggling in rough and cold weather. The UNHCR has at the same time reminded the European Union countries of the continued urgent need to help to resolve the situation in Greece through the relocation of asylum seekers by other member states. Total arrivals in Greece last year was 173,000. And on January 6, 2017, the High Commissioner again twittered the following: in 2015, the EU agreed to relocate 66,400 refugees from Greece, but less than 8,000 have been relocated. Not an example of responsibility sharing, he said. Mytilene, the capital of Lesbos, has a population of about 90,000, yet saw almost 450,000 refugees pass through during 2015. In December, I met Mayor Galinos and local civil society organizations such as Mosaic and Lesbos Solidarity, and with representatives of international humanitarian organizations, Caritas, Médecins Sans Frontières, SOS Children's Village, in the locally administrated Karatepe refugee center. On a nearby wall, I saw another graffiti. It said, "No human is illegal." Several Swedish non-profit organizations, such as Lighthouse Relief and We Do What We Can, and hundreds of Swedish volunteers have given the direct support on Lesbos and other places, and some of them are present here today, and we salute them. When Olof Palme in 1965 first addressed the issue of refugees and immigration, then immigration to Sweden numbered 400,000 people, of which 150,000 had come from World War II. 2 decades later, between 1985 and 1995, another 400,000 came to seek asylum, mainly from the wars in Yugoslavia. 20 years later, in 2015, a record high 163,000 persons fled to Sweden, up from 81,000 in 2014. Thus, in the last 3 years, more than 250,000 people, homeless because of wars and misery, sought refuge in our country. Today, more than ever, the refugee drama has become a common European concern, first and foremost for the war refugees themselves, who had to flee from family, home, and country, from their history and everyday life. At first, as we know, solidarity in most European countries was swift and strong. But with time, as wars and terror continued unabated, some people started to react against the flow of migration. This resulted in scenes of chaos at borders, leading to breakdown in the public trust in the capacity of governments and local institutions to manage the situation, and playing in the hands of those who want to turn refugees into scapegoats. But civil society, local authorities, and private citizens struggle on. What we have learned, or what we should have learned, is that also stable welfare societies can be shaken and even damaged by sudden and unexpected shocks. Another important lesson is that we need to mobilize and engage not only authorities and voluntary organizations, but the force of civilian action, of citizen action, for the sake of our own cohesion and for solidarity and future challenges. Carsten Jensen, the Danish writer who got the Palmepris in 2009, reminded us recently that the word consciousness, samvete in Swedish and Danish, literally means sharing knowledge, samvete. This shared knowledge is both a method and a hope. It can best be achieved and rooted in the public mind through public schools, where you learn from each other and become citizens. Jensen says, in a democracy, the classroom is a school of consciousness and the strongest bastion of civilization. It is there where a new world order can begin. And last year, the Palmepris awardee of 2011, the Italian writer Roberto Saviano, noted in a commemorative text to the foundation, and I quote, "We must look up to Olof Palme's lesson when we cope with the flow of migrants that seek asylum today. A policy of tolerance, of welcoming practices and inclusion. It is not a matter of choosing the right side of the barricade. It is a matter of tearing down those barricades." And Saviano added, in his famous political treatise, The Prince, Machiavelli wrote, and Machiavelli said, "To build new castles means only new sieges." It was in the year 1513. And yet, to our dismay, today in the year 2017, such an offensive wall is to be built against Mexico. But even a Trump castle would be an insecure and traumatizing experience. Ladies and gentlemen, with this year's prize ceremony, we want to honor compassionate action in a time when suffering is enormous, causes of asylum overwhelming, and solidarity needed more than ever. When we underline the need for international solidarity, the humanistic imperative, we do not deny the legality of borders and nation states, but we focus on fellow human beings in acute need and on our role in this Greek drama. Therefore, the 2016 Olof Palme Prize is awarded to the two mayors, Spyridon Galinos of Lesbos and Giusi Nicolini of Lampedusa and Linosa, for their inspiring leadership in one of the most difficult periods of our time, thereby having saved thousands of lives and given hope and belief in the future. Together with their citizens, Spyridon Galinos and Giusi Nicolini opened their minds and societies for fellow human beings fleeing from war, terror, and misery. In an increasing, dangerous, and cruel world, they have stressed the humanistic imperative that it is more important to protect people than borders. And I ask us all to applaud them. I would now ask Lisbeth Palme to transfer the diploma to our two awardees. Would you please come up, Spyridon, Giusi? Thank you very much. Please be seated. I will now ask also the Saba band to come up on the stage. The Saba band consists of Tarek Al-Hajj, Maya Al-Hajj, Khalil Al-Hajj, and Nabil Kassis. They come from Palme and Syria.
قلبي وجاه بعطيك سبع أرباع خيوم من العيد قارس مالي هالأسمار اللون هالأسمراني تعباني أنا للخيوم هواك
قدك المياس يا عمري يا غصين البان كاليسري قدك المياس يا عمري يا غصين البان كاليسري أنت أحلى الناس في نظري جل من سواك يا قمر أنا وحبيبي في جنينك والورد مخيم علينا أنا وحبيبي في جنينك الورد مخيم علينا طلب مني وصاله يا رب استر علينا قدك المياس يا عمري يا غصين البان كاليسري أنت أحلى الناس في نظري جل من سواك يا قمري
Thank you. What was the theme of the song? What was the name and the theme of the song? What? Did it have a name, the song? It have a name, the song which you're saying? Hade det något namn?
From Aleppo, traditionellt från Syrien. De forlåter först heter fågelnackel och هالأسمر det andra heter قدوكالمياس.
Gammal traditionell musik från Aleppo. Tack, ni återkommer sedan. We will now see a short video, very short video, from Lampedusa, and then Giusi will speak. But first, the video.
Don't worry, stay calm, don't worry, don't worry.
Attento però, sta andando indietro con la deriva. Stai attento con la moto.
A sinistra il faro! C'è uno in acqua lì!
Sven, take this. Take this. Take. 5 metri entro in acqua. C'è qualcuno?
La comandante, ok, stop. Senti, soccorritori, mi serve sapere, mi confermi stabilità a posto per il numero che abbiamo stimato?
Inizia il recupero.
Togliamo tutto adesso.
lasciate a prova.
Aspetta! Vai, vai! Vai, forza! Vieni qua! Oh, vieni qua! Ehi! Dai che ce la fai, dai! Ah, molla! Peppe! Parabordi, molla! Molla parabordi, mollalo! Molla, sgancia! Strapieno di persone qua sotto. How many people? 100.
Sono molto emozionata.
I am very emotional and greatly honored to be here to receive the Olof Palme Prize together with the Lesbos Mayor. And I'm quite tearful watching this video, which represents our daily life in Lampedusa. My two islands, Lampedusa and Linos, are very small, and we have approximately 6,300 inhabitants that live off fishing and tourism. They are geographically at the center of the Mediterranean and a bridge between Africa and Europe, and have always been a fundamental junction for the migration between the two continents. About 20 years ago, we had the first migration that coming through the Sahara to Libya and in the Mediterranean towards Lampedusa. This is the biggest tragedy of our time, and all those that have crossed the sea up to 2013 landed in Lampedusa because that was the only door open to Europe. With the Mare Nostrum operation in 2014, the Navy has started taking these people that were saved to other places on the Sicilian coast, and this is still happening today with the Frontex ships. Approximately 300,000 people have been saved thanks to my islands. So when I think about them, I imagine 300,000 new Lampedusa citizens around the world that contribute to the growth of the West and to pay the pensions of our old people. All islands are welcoming, and this is their nature, not a question of heroism, because islands are rafts in the sea that offer shelter and security. What is not normal is that the sea cannot be crossed freely like it has always happened in history. What is not normal is the fact that people that need help should die by the thousand in trying to cross the liquid frontier in Europe and have to put their lives and that of their children in the hands of organized crimes, become goods, and have have no dignity. It is not normal that the power to decide about entry in Europe is left to people trafficking, and that the EU should worry more about the nets, the fishing nets, rather than the Dublin regulation. So it is not normal to see this indifference in the face of this humanitarian catastrophe that we are witnessing for 20 years or more, and the Mediterranean has become a graveyard. And we see that in spite of all this tragedy, there is no true solution. They are pushed back, the boats are bombarded, there are naval blockades, and for some people, helping them would be working with the criminal organizations. But this is a big business, because these migrants pay before they leave their land, not when they arrive, which is what happens for arms and drugs. So whilst our goods, before they become money, have to reach the destination, for human beings this is not the case, because even the dead have paid the price before they leave. And they die during the trip, whether it's cold or hot, or because their drugs have been thrown into the sea, or because they are stifled in these boats. And helping them is never enough. The UN counted 5,000 dead people in 2016. It's as if the population of my islands had completely disappeared, without any indignations in those people who put forward measures that are totally ineffective. And after each shipwreck, there is the hypocrisy of those that could help them, and there is the risk of the public opinion becoming bored in the light of these horrible happenings. The biggest shipwreck in the Mediterranean is not the one that caused 366 victims on the 3rd of October in 2013, where the Italian PM, Mr. Letta, knelt in front of the dead with Mr. Barroso, said no more tragedies in the Mediterranean, and the Pope, who said shame. And in spite of all this, in April 2015, we had over 700 victims, and we see fear and cynicism in our Europe that bends forward in front of the finance power and does not look after these people. And this is due to the lack of a coherent policy. Europe is not sufficiently shameful of all what is going on, and uses protectionism rather than helping these people. But how long can this go on before we realize that this is becoming a genocide, before we can understand that so many people are considered superfluous, and in Bauman's definition they have no value and no use. Facts demonstrate that there are no solution apart from managing the flows and regulated asylums that need to be granted before people go onto the boats, because this is the only way to fight people's trafficking, to prevent tragedies, and not to betray our civil society, and to guarantee human rights and protect people and boundaries. and to save Europe, because we're about to lose all our values, and we need to act quickly, because soon there could be no longer a Europe, there no longer be a peace project and no future, because if we do not take into account human rights, we will never find happiness and the rights for all. So what is special in Lampedusa and in Linosa? Is it their courage? Well, I must tell you, we were also fearful. Linosa is very small, with 433 inhabitants, and when a boat arrives with 500 people, this is an incredible undertaking for the island. Lampedusa has 5,800 inhabitants, and in 2011, in only 2 months, we had the arrival of 25,000 Tunisians, and our Minister of the Interior, Mr. Maroni of the Northern League, said they should all be sent back, and this was not possible. And this was rather ridiculous in a country like Italy, because 25,000 would have been easy to manage. But they were left in a prison, an open sky prison in Lampedusa, to make it into a political win. And this was considered a perfect invasion, because these Tunisians were considered stray dogs. And for my inhabitants, it meant no trade, because no tourists came. So we have experienced fear for survival, but we understood that the reasons was just political and bad management of immigration. So we did not fall into the trap of thinking these people were our enemies. So the emergency along the Balkans that we saw on TV is exactly the same scene of the perfect invasion that this time was applied to the European macrocosm. What was the point of having 15,000 people behind the barbed wire in Idomeni to save us from terrorism? Not at all. We know that all over the world we have over 1 billion people looking for safety, and they stay mainly in the nearby countries. And we also know that environmental refugees are going to grow a lot in the next few years because of climate change that will also increase wars and poverty, and therefore will increase migration. But today in Europe we talk about the emergency, and only a few managed to overcome death to arrive on our coasts. In Italy, we saw the arrival of 180,000 people, mainly coming from Eritrea, where there is a dictatorship, Somalia, where there is a war, Nigeria because of Boko Haram, and then also from Ghana, Mali, Ivory Coast. So the emergency today is not due to numbers, but to the lack of a system of reception. We only have emergency structures and a total lack of common policies in Europe. The Juncker plan for welcoming these people has not actually been implemented, and only 2,600 migrants have been moved from Italy to other European countries, whilst there should be 40,000. And the attitude that Italy has shown towards my island, Lampedusa, Europe is showing it towards Italy and Greece. Today, Lampedusa no longer thinks of the emergency rationale, because we understand that we cannot treat these people as the victims of an earthquake, because this is stupid. The result is that today the people that are saved are treated better compared to the past, and the tourists have come back and increased by 30% in the last summer So we have shown that with all what we do for these migrants, we do it also for ourselves. And we have shown that welcoming these people doesn't kill us. Only if we are responsible and welcoming towards everybody means we can guarantee a future to ourselves that are the lucky ones, because we were born on this side of the sea and this side of the walls. In Lampedusa, we learn these dramatic stories that these people have lived and the deep reasons of these trips they undertake. So it's experience that makes us special, not courage, and we understand why these people leave everything behind them, their land, their families, and they start a journey towards the unknown with just a few photographs, a book, the Quran or the Gospel, and they travel for months and years with suffering. And the survivors of the 3rd of October told us that the women, when they arrived in Libya, they are raped many times by the criminals that managed the trafficking, and are offered also to other men. The men are tortured so that their families would pay the price, and when the money does not arrive, they are killed unless they're willing to offer one of their organs instead of money. We have also learned that those people that on the 3rd of October died very close to Lampedusa paid 4,800 euros each for that trip that brought them to death. No edict of the European fortress or any barbed wire will stop these people that do not even stop in the face of death, simply because they have no other choice. Migration is one of the best strategies for survival and cannot be stopped, but they can be governed. Rather than investing billions of euros in constructing walls, we have to give proper help and cooperation to the people in the Mediterranean, and we have to fight against people trafficking, because this money helps terrorism, and instead of attacking welfare because of austerity, it is important to invest in social policy to avoid exclusion and alienation of these people in our cities, because we know that otherwise they may become terrorists and hit the heart of Europe. And we need to ensure that we can live with these people, and we must invest in resources and especially in values, not simply build walls. Olof Palme 30 years ago said, "We cannot build walls to separate us from the rest of the world, because a wall is isolation. Evolution brings human beings closer in a relationship that brings stimulus but also difficulties. But if we want to survive, we have to learn how to live with others." Today, the European countries concentrate on defending internal and external boundaries rather than building a Europe that is safer for everybody. And favor, and I think this is my belief, but it's under the eyes of everybody, a sort of siege, a lot of suffering, dishumanity, that all create hatred and fear on the one hand, and racism and xenophobia on the other hand. We also see how heroic these men and women and children are when they arrive on those boats, even though they may be sick, but they have a faith in the future. And we are in the middle. We are the islands, the periphery, and an ignored boundary, even though we are perhaps some of the most beautiful places in the Mediterranean. We are small and alone, but we must remain human. We have to act to create peace and future. And welcoming these people is one of the things we have to do. And this will be the strength and the humanity of these lands and these cities, even if small, to save the world. Thank you.
I have no question. You said it all. Ha detto tutto. Grazie. We will now see a short video from Lesvos and then ask the mayor to come up.
I must confess that I feel awe, true awe, standing in front of the image of a man, a leader of worldwide renown and influence. A man killed, who suffered an untimely death from the bullets of cowardly people. who ended up, rather than making him disappear, make him live forever in eternity. Honorable President, distinguished guests, Mrs. Palme, thank you all very much for your warm welcome, for your hospitality. You're welcome to one of Europe's most beautiful cities, Stockholm. I come to you from the Greek island of Lesbos, which is in the Aegean Sea. This is the island where arriving travelers, quote, leave behind the entire known world and enter uncharted seas, end quote, in the words of Odysseus Elitis, who was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1979 in this very city. On that occasion, he filled all of us, his fellow islanders and all Greeks, with enormous pride. Lesbos, a remote Aegean island, has today become an emblem of genuine humanity and solidarity, a source of hope for the society envisaged by Olof Palme, where mutual respect and responsibility provide everyone with equal opportunity and equal value. A society where, in Palme's words, quote, human beings will be in equilibrium when doing good things, not because God says to, but because they feel like doing them. That makes them feel good themselves. So, responding instinctively to the call of their conscience and their humanitarian sense of duty, my countrymen in Lesbos have handled a tremendous humanitarian crisis in an exemplary way. I am honored by the fact that I have been chosen to represent them, people who did everything they could, made huge sacrifices to respond to a humanitarian crisis in a way which inspired the international community and showed the world what it means to be truly Greek, a true inhabitant of the Aegean Islands. They have done so by standing up to a crucial historical challenge, even when this has meant acting alone. For we were alone during the first months of the crisis. In late 2014, early 2015, until about September 2015, we were on our own, fighting to save lives, to provide warmth to young children and their mothers, who kissed the ground upon arriving in Lesbos, which was, for them, a promised land, my homeland, European land. It was those acts of welcome by the local community which mobilized international organizations, NGOs, and many independent volunteers to come to Lesbos and help us provide a humanitarian response to the refugee crisis. Among them were ordinary people from Sweden, many of them, many of your fellow citizens who found themselves on the shores of Lesbos at the Karatepe and Pikpa refugee centers. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all those people from the bottom of my heart. For our job would have been so much harder without the help of all of those people, those volunteers who came from everywhere, from many countries throughout Europe. We could not have done it without you. The contribution of those people is particularly important. It deserves special recognition, cannot be taken for granted. And I say that because there were some people and even organizations, in some cases, supposedly providing charitable services, but who came with a different agenda. But the efforts of people in Lesbos to manage the crisis were not restricted to local action. Based on our experience, we made proposals for a better, more effective, and more humane response at European level, because at that crucial time, Europe had no policy to deal with the refugee crisis. It seemed that European leaders could not see that there were fires around us, war around us, bombs falling on the houses and heads of those people, forcing them to leave everything they had. It seemed that they didn't know what was going on, that they didn't expect mothers to take their children into their arms and flee the conditions of war, braving the dangerous seas. As the Syrian president of the refugee community in Turkey said, after so many people had died in the Aegean, he asked if people would stop undertaking this perilous voyage. His response was, "We left death. We fled from death. We will not stop fleeing towards hope, even if death is dogging our every step." But it seemed that no one understood that. Those cries fell on deaf ears. And now people talk about a problem when we're really dealing with people. We're talking about victims. They're victims of our own policies, the policies of people who create wars rather than stopping them. We hear about figures, statistics, but we forget that behind those statistics are people, lives, mothers, small children, lives of innocent people. People who have been led to become refugees by us, by our policies. We call them problems. We have made them problems for European and international communities. But if we want to deal with the crisis, if we really want to stop untimely deaths taking place all around us, then all we have to do is to stop warfare. All we have to do is to stand together, to fight all together, all Europeans together, to stop fighting. However, unfortunately, at this great time of crisis, many leaderships in Europe have not stood up to the challenge of the times. They've proved unable to meet that challenge, perhaps unwilling to do so, to deal with this humanitarian crisis. They did not want to listen, and they continue to ignore what they hear. They didn't want to look the actual menaces to Europe in the face, menaces, threats to our homes and lives, and they just talk about the refugee problem, the victims of their own policies. However, I beseech you to believe me, the real problem, the real danger for Europe is those ideas, the ideas which are born of such policies, xenophobic ideas, racist ideas, ideas which lead to fascism, ideas which lend strength to extremist movements, ideas which lead to what we in Europe suffered in the last century, and which does not seem to have taught anyone. And perhaps some people are even driving us there again, deliberately. So, may I take this opportunity in this holy place. Let me take this opportunity again to appeal to all European leaders And I must ask all of you to join your voices, each and every one of us, ordinary people, and demand that warfare stop, that crime stops, that we stop all of this road which is leading to fascism. We can do it. The power is in our hand. It's in all of our hands together. As I said, we, as the municipality of Lesbos, submitted proposals to local and national authorities which did nothing else except to respond to the call of our conscience. That's what all of us in the Aegean did. We were saving people, saving lives, knowing that these people were the victims of policies, that they came fleeing death, and they arrived on a land which for them was a land of hope. They landed in Europe, where they wanted a place in the sun, under the European sun, and we offered them that place, that refuge on our Aegean islands. And we tried to use everything we had available to us, all our financial means, with the scant financial resources we had available to us on the island, in a Greece plagued by crisis, in a Greece, a country where every family, every household was struggling with its own problems. But we stood up to that challenge. People in the Aegean Islands, my fellow countrymen and your fellow countrymen throughout Europe, found the strength to stand up, to meet that challenge. They stood up strong, and they helped to deal with a huge challenge. And they did so with dignity, sending out the right message to all of Europe and to everyone in the world. They showed the way that our leaderships should follow, trying to awaken people's conscience. And people's conscience was awakened. People did come to us. They helped us to handle the crisis. However, many leaders continue to turn a deaf ear, as if they didn't know what was going on, as if they didn't know what needed to be done. Often they make announcements saying they're giving money to help deal with the problem, as if giving money makes you more humane, as if you can avoid death by throwing money at it. What we need is new policies. And because it's become clear that some governments did not stand up to the challenge of the times, we made proposals from Lesbos, in addition to our initial suggestion that there should be a better policy of managing the refugee crisis so that we could avoid the exploitation of man by man. We made a new proposal, putting the role of municipalities first, the role of people first, suggesting the creation of a network of municipalities, of cities throughout Europe, so that all of us could undertake the responsibility for managing this humanitarian crisis together. And cities responded to us. We got responses from throughout Greece and throughout Europe. There is a network of cities now which has been established, and it is now being supported by more than 100 mayors of cities throughout Europe. 100 local communities. We've got support from the Pope. We've got support from the Patriarch of Constantinople, from the Patriarch of Greece, and from the General Secretary of the United Nations, both the outgoing and incoming new General Secretary of the United Nations. However, that work has been obstructed because people have focused the effort on certain specific places. They've buried their heads in the sand. They've decided to turn a blind eye to what's happening. They think that in that way they can deal with the phantom of fascism which hovers over us all. They hide because they do not have the guts to stand up and take their responsibilities, because they do not have the guts to admit that they were wrong, because they do not have the courage to open their hearts and their arms to the victims of their own policies. That's what we need to do. We need to open our arms to the victims of bad policy. I'd like to share my dream with you. From the island of Lesbos, which I say is like a beacon of shining light, a beacon of hope for humanity. A shining light which is not very strong now, but I want all of your help to make it stronger, to make it shine throughout the world. The light showing the way that Europe must take. That is my dream. My dream was for that dim light to grow stronger and finally awaken our governments. Ideas always survive. Values always prevail. They can survive any crisis and any mistaken policy. It is values which survive the test of time. Bringing me back to what I said at the beginning, they can make an assassination turn into an eternal memory. That's what they have done. That's what the bullet which killed Olof Palme has done, because ideas cannot be killed. They cannot be erased. You can't put up a wall in front of ideas such as the walls which Europe wants to put up around us. You cannot put up a wall to protect yourself from ideas and from ideals, humanitarian ideals, the ones upheld so strongly by Olof Palme, the ones which we all here uphold so strongly. We need to give the example, being inspired by leaders such as Palme, who have gone before us. So we need to fight for those ideas and for those ideals to the end. Or, as you say in Swedish, ända in I kaklet. I apologize for my poor Swedish, says the speaker. Don't worry. Don't worry. I won't take up more of your time. I'm almost done. I would like to say, however, again, that it is a great honor and source of pride for me to stand here today on behalf of my countrymen from the island of Lesbos, to whom this prize is being awarded. Simple people, fishermen, traders, businessmen working in tourism, people who never weighed the value of a human life against the value of money, people who didn't hesitate to run and give their help. It's to those people that I would like to express a heartfelt word of thanks, and it's to those people that today's prize from your foundation is being awarded, and it is on behalf of those people that I accept this prize, and it is to them that I will give the prize. Thank you very much. Thank you. It was a huge honor. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you all in Lesbos. I was expecting the president of the foundation to ask me a question, if he has anything to ask me at the end of my speech. I'm willing to take any question, and I was hoping in responding to those questions, that I would also have the chance to ask all of you to avoid punishment of people who are fighting to stop a humanitarian crisis, because my fellow countrymen in Lesbos now are being punished. They're being punished because the image of my island that is projected to international public opinion have nothing to do with reality. Those images are created by people who want to put people off, to intimidate them, to make them scared to come and visit this beautiful island in the Aegean. But that's not the true image of my island. It's a beautiful island. It's a safe island. There is no reason whatever for anyone to fear coming to this beautiful island. It is an island of rich cultural history with wonderful architecture, and last but not least, an island which, because of the crisis, has highlighted the beauty, the internal beauty of its citizens. We cannot punish those citizens. Just as you are giving the award, the prize of your foundation to those people, we have to reward those people. We have to strengthen those people with our own message, with your own message. So please, I invite all of you, each and every one of you, come visit Lesbos this summer so that the charter flights can come again from Sweden to Lesbos. I wait for all of you. I look forward to welcome you personally. Thank you very much.
I will now invite the Saba band back on stage, the Saba band. I had no further question for Spyridon either.
شدوا الهم قوي مركبنا عالبحر يا بحر هيلا 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 شدوا الهم قوي مركبنا عالبحر يا بحر هيلا 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 يا ريس ريس هالمينا معروف الألعجايب يا بحري هيلا 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 وخلف الألعال أحلى ساحات الدنيا مطرحنا يا بحري هيلا 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 وهيلا هيلا وماني يا حبايب ماني سلامة قلبك يا غزالي وماني يا حبايب ماني سلامة قلبك يا غزالي وشني من وارد كله عند حبيبي بيكفاني ماني يا حبايب هلا وقلبي بهواك معلق وماني يا حبايب هلا وقلبي بهواك معلق وإن كان جوزك طلع أنا عندك حاضر يا عيوني ماني يا حبايب ماني سلامة قلبك يا غزالي يوشلي بالورد كله عند حبيبي بيكفاني
Tack så jättemycket.
Thank you, Maya Al-Haj, Tarek Al-Haj, Khalil Al-Jaj, and Nabil Kassis. Thank you very much. You have not only given us wonderful music, showing your musical skills, but you have also reminded us of what the mayor said. We must stop the wars, also in Syria. There must be a stop to the war in Syria, so that one can stay at home. Thank you. Dear friends, now you also know that you can hire a band, it's a Sava band, thank you, from Palme for your parties. But you also know, and yes, we will come and visit Lampedusa and Lesbos and the other isles. Thank you for the invitation to all of us. We will come in great numbers. Thank you very much. You have, Giusi and Spyridon, you have inspired us. You have given us an example of fighting solidarity, great compassion, civilian solidarity. And we thank you for illuminating us here today, and we are thankful for your coming here to tell us your stories, your experiences. We can learn from that. And I will now invite you all out in the galleries here for a drink and something to nibble, and also to mix and talk with each other. Thank you for coming this year's award. Thank you, thank you.